This message comes from Mint Mobile. Starting at $15 a month, make the switch at mintmobile.com/switch. $45 upfront payment for 3 months. 5 gigabyte plan equivalent to $15 a month. Taxes and fees extra. First 3 months only. See terms.
Let's establish some facts first. Are you or are you not a fan of Rosalía?
I'll say I'm a cusp. I am not, but I'd like to be.
I'm definitely a fan. I can't say I'm a stan because I don't have a parasocial relationship with her yet, but I will say I'm a huge fan of her music.
I love the yet. I would say I am an admirer of Rosalía's talent. The music is good. That's undeniable. But the aesthetics make me a little, let's say, uneasy. Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. Spanish artist Rosalía's new album, Lux, came out today, November 7th, and the release has been causing a stir amongst fans and critics alike. We're getting into it with writer and critic Bilal Qureshi and writer and critic Michelle Santiago-Cortez. Welcome to the show, Michelle and Bilal. Thank you for having us, yeah.
Thanks for having us, Brittany.
So just some background here for those of you who may not be familiar with the Princesa. A consistent critique of Rosalía and the music industry as a whole has been the blurred lines of who is or is not a part of diasporic Latinidad. Now, while I respect Rosalía's talent, her aesthetics are giving throwback Gwen Stefani, and not in the fun way. Walk with me. Rosalía is a Spanish pop star, Spanish as in from Spain, the European country, who got her start making flamenco music. She sings predominantly in Spanish. But shot to fame masquerading as a Latin American or Afro-Caribbean person, even though she's from the country that colonized those regions. Back in the 90s and 2000s, Gwen Stefani was doing something similar with Indian, Japanese, Jamaican, and Chicana culture. My sister left no stone unturned back in those days. In Rosalía's case, she's doing long nails like the Puerto Rican reggaeton legend Ivy Queen, curled baby hairs, Caribbean slang, and lots of reggaeton beats. She sometimes even slips into caricature in her performances, neck rolls, exaggerated gum chewing, and standing with a hand on her popped-out hip. I feel like I can't hear Rosalía without thinking about her chomping on that gum.
It's just so cringe.
But she's not chomping on the gum in her nun era. She's gone to church, Brittany.
Okay, yes. Let's talk about Rosalía's nun era. Her new album, Lux, seems to be a classical tinged pop album where she returns to her European roots. Okay, so Bilal, we should note that you were at a release party for the new album the week before it came out. Tell us, what was the party like, and what did you make of the new music?
Well, I should just first say that I was not invited by Rosalía or anyone on her team. I just signed up randomly on her website for what was an advanced listening event. So yeah, I got to listen to the album in full with about 200 people, and it was small, and she came to speak at the end of it about sort of what the concept had been, and it was played on this kind of wall of sound inside a kind of cathedral-like building in Brooklyn. It was wild because the theme of it is and you can see it from the cover image, it's sort of Catholic church, life of a church girl maybe is maybe a code name for it, or a Catholic church girl. But the point being that she has this incredibly grand, it's long, it's a concept album that begins and ends with 4 movements. And I think as the reviews have attested to it, I would say it's quite a masterpiece and probably her biggest album.
But I'll say, while many fans are thrilled by this new direction that Rosalía is taking, a lot of Latinas and Caribbean folks are frustrated, feeling like, yet another European artist has used their culture for clout and profit and moved right on. And I'm honestly just wondering if Rosalía's American pop audience understands the difference between being Hispanic, Latino, or Caribbean well enough to follow what's going on in the first place.
It really does feel like, she played Latina for a while and now she's tired of it and she's moved on. I mean, I think the decision making is happening at a systemic level, an industry level, a record label level of marketing level, but she is the person who benefits from it the most. And she's the one who's in as good a position as anyone to stop it or halt it. And then the context and the timing of it has been like all of a sudden when being visibly Latino can get you in an ICE detention center, all of a sudden she remembers she's from Spain. All of a sudden, like, we're not wearing grills anymore, we're not wearing long nails, we're not doing the baby hairs. All of a sudden, it's like Spanish Catholicism core.
Right. We, of course, don't know what's going on in Rosalia's mind and why her aesthetic is evolving. But Michelle, I'm hearing you talk about how you, and I'm sure a lot of her audience, are understanding her performance of identity within a larger context.
We don't exist in a world where, like, what artists do is, like, separated from the political and historical context of it all. I think it's kind of a stretch to, like, accuse it of being, like, any kind of orchestrated master plan thing of, like, her capitalizing on Latinidad and then dropping it because it's getting dangerous. But it's, like, they're all happening on the same screen. Like, it's the same phone that's showing me the ICE detention videos and her pivot to white girlness. No one can separate these two realities.
I would say that before the kind of collision with the idea of like playing Latinidad for gain, in Spain, she was also critiqued for being a flamenco artist as someone from Barcelona, because she's from Catalonia. That is the music of Andalusia and the Roma and kind of underprivileged community that has produced that music in the south of Spain. And there was a question of whether she could and should be the forebearer of this tradition. So there was the debate about her from the very beginning. Like, where do you draw the line between being a vulture of another culture or actually being legitimately inspired by it? And I think her response has always been, I'm someone who travels and who's very open to lots of ideas, and I'm inspired by different things. I feel like it's been a little more complex than that, but I think the critiques of her kind of get into a larger question of like, who is guilty of appropriation and who's guilty of being inspired. I don't see the new album as being, to be honest with you, that big of a pivot away completely from her sound, because there's still hard driving sections in the album that kind of, I think there's going to be some songs that are going to be kind of bangers, and there's some that are more classical. I mean, it's not like the orchestra is throughout. She's not singing an aria in this album. It's still a pop record.
Although Berghain, she gets a little operatic with it. She
does. Yeah. I mean, the one thing about her records, and I think that's why music critics really like them, is that they're extremely complex and they invite and they reward lots of dissection. So I think people will nerd out on all this stuff going on because it's a long album and quite a dense album in some ways. She kind of blew up at a moment that America was having what sort of was described as a second Latin pop wave, post Despacito and the kind of rise of like Bad Bunny as well at the same time. And she was sort of marketed into that moment and singing mostly in Spanish because she doesn't sing in English really.
Like you pointed out below, like she was imported into the North American market as part of this second wave Latin boom. She was marketed as a Latina artist. Audiences received her or were encouraged to receive her as a Latina artist. And for better or worse, she played into that actively.
I think about that interview she did a few years ago. I think it was with Billboard, called Growing Up Latino or something like that. And she said that she feels Latina. I have no clue if she'd say that today.
She said that, and like she was like, when I go to Mexico or Panama, I'm pretty sure like the Spanish colonizers have always felt very much at home in Latin America because these are countries that were colonized in the likeness and image of their homeland. Not to be hyperbolic about her, but I really do feel like if she's the artist we say she is in terms of her virtuosity and her expansive thinking and her travels, I want her to live in the real world. If she's trying to connect people and she's talking about singing various languages because multiculturalism, I think that's fabulous. But we don't all live in the fantasy land where you can just travel everywhere and be Miss Worldwide. If you really want to connect with people, why not acknowledge that you're on different levels of a very real caste system? But yeah, I do feel like the machine of it all is probably more liable. Like her record label is probably who's responsible for pushing her candidacy in the Latin Grammys.
I mean, when you talk about the business of it all, or, as both of you have gestured at, like how Rosalía is read by others, specifically, we're talking in American context. a lot of Americans might see Rosalía as Latina. Like, even if they never saw that Billboard interview where she said she feels Latina, they just might read her that way, even though she is very much a Spanish woman from Europe and not from Latin America. Aside from her borrowing heavily from Latina and specifically Afro-Caribbean influences, what are some other reasons that American audiences specifically might misread Rosalía as Latina?
I think it's funny, but I always saw her as a European artist. When I saw that she had come from Barcelona and studied classical music in Spain, she's very much an internet it girl too. It's very high fashion, it's very glam. I loved, Michelle, when you said Miss Worldwide. That's a big part of kind of her vibe. It's very much like Euro tripping, like EU resident, flying between Berlin to Spain to whatever. But I do think that, this sounds really basic, but sometimes I feel like in America we do forget that like Spanish is a European language as well. And I think she has sort of said that growing up in Spain, what's cool music in Spanish is Latin American music. What's considered cool in Spain among youth culture, I'm not an expert on Barcelona or Madrid youth culture, but they listen to what people are making in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean as influence. And so I think in America, we have a particular relationship with Spanish as a language, which may also affect how she was marketed and branded and promoted, and also what she herself was doing. So I do think it speaks to kind of when international artists or people who have more of a global background come to America, you do have to like fit in a certain way that is legible to us. It's true of African artists. It's true of like South Asian artists. It's like, who do you feature with? Who are you shown with? And in some ways, we're in this big global Spotify moment, but I still think there are like limitations to what people can read and understand.
Coming up,
it's not an ethnic group to be a Spanish speaker, but it's a way of being connected to people around an identity, around a language.
more when we come back.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Pete and Jerry's Eggs, inviting you to tag along with one of their organic pasture-raised hens as she heads out for her day in the pasture. She and her friends start to roam and forage, hunting for tasty organic snacks. And with 108 square feet per hen, there's plenty of space for everyone. Under the open sky, they can hear songbirds nesting in the trees. They bask in the sounds of nature as they prepare to lay their rich, delicious eggs. And when the sun starts to set, the crickets begin to sing. Time to catch one last squiggly snack before bedtime. To learn more about Pete and Jerry's organic pasture-raised eggs and the certified humane farms where their hens roam, visit peteandjerrys.com. This message comes from NPR sponsor Sierra. No matter the industry, how businesses connect with customers defines their brand. And today, connection starts with a conversation. Sierra is the platform for businesses that want to provide better, more human customer experiences with AI. With Sierra, your AI agent solves problems fast. No stock answers, no hold music. Visit Sierra.ai to learn more.
This message is sponsored by DSW, the birthplace of the humble brag. Full of all kinds of shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. And when there are never-ending options for every style, mood, occasion, and budget, there is unlimited freedom to play. And that's something to brag about. So go ahead, stock up on fresh sneakers from your favorite brands, or try those boots you always secretly knew you could pull off. Find the shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. DSW, let them surprise you.
I mean, an example that you gave yesterday, Bilal, was Tyla. Say more about that, please.
Yeah, I mean, she's a South African artist and kind of identifies as being colored, which is a mixed race background, of South Asian and African heritage, which is an actual racial group in South Africa. And she has, I think, struggled with being understood sometimes because she used that term, which is, of course, a very particular and loaded term in America to throw into it. I don't think she's really become a star of like the R&B world in the way that she may have anticipated she could have been, because I think some of her interviews have not been received well. And, let's be honest, the American market is the market that you want to be in if you want to make money. Like tours, marketing, American audiences are the most hyped audiences anywhere in the world. Everybody wants to eventually make it in the States. And I think some of these artists are forced into some of their antics because of that. I think, unfortunately, like, it feels to me like Tyla is a bit stuck in some kind of weird 90s R&B netherworld that doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, I'm with Tyla. I'm rooting for you, girl.
She's been in that water for a long time.
No, she's got some good songs. Okay, Jump was a good song. That was a bop. But Michelle, I want to hear from you on this as well. Why do you think, what are some other reasons that American audiences specifically might be misreading Rosalía?
Yeah, I think from the American perspective, in North-South America, the way race is constructed, it's primarily like constructed around the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade. So if you start from there, most of the people that were brought over to the Americas on the transatlantic slave trade ended up in Central and South America. So when you're talking about the legacy of slavery, the lion's share of the people with that ancestry are in Latin America by a huge margin. So I always feel like that is a good place for Americans to start. I think in America, people are used to interfacing with Latinidad as usually they picture this brown migrant from somewhere in Central and South America, and they're always shocked when they realize that there are white Latinos, that there are black Latinos. I feel like that's the issue that gets lost in the sauce, is like, because the Latina demographic in the US is considered like, although it's shifting, but it's typically been considered like you're a person of color, you're not white, you're other, various stages of migrant and citizenship status throughout history. And so they usually get put in the bucket of like non-white person of color. Latinidad is not a monolith.
I also want to point out, I mean, you bring up whiteness, and I think that because of America's sort of black-white binary in terms of race, Americans have trouble understanding the nuances that exist within all these other cultural categories, especially outside of the U.S.
Can I just add that, like, Rosalía then follows the problematic presentation of Antonio Banderas and Penelope Cruz into American culture, too. Both Spaniards.
Right, exactly.
100%.
Who also were kind of presented as sort of raven-haired
Latino,
like Latinos, because we've got we've got Mr. Zorro himself, and we have like,
yeah.
And I would say that in a lot of ways, also Spaniards do have. Let's not forget 800 years of Arab North African mixing and intercultural mixing that produced Iberia. I mean, flamenco comes with its roots in the Middle East and India. So a lot of what's going on musically is quite connected to sort of a whole other kind of music that Spain is part of. I just think, to me, I'm not saying this to forgive Rosalía or to dismiss the context that we're talking about, but it's hard for me sometimes to be always thinking about the context when you put on your headphones or listen to one of her albums, because it's a completely immersive, incredible music experience.
I feel like I can't hear Rosalía without thinking about her chomping on that gum, though.
But she's not chomping on the gum in her nun era. She's gone to church, Brittany.
When it gets to like the gum chewing, it's just so cringe. It's like watching Taylor Swift do hip hop. So I think broad strokes, I think it takes a lot of work to put like Rosalía's racial gymnastics next to her music. The racial gymnastics that gets ethically ambiguous happens in the marketing promotion side versus the music itself. Like you said, Bilal, like I feel like if you never saw a Rosalía interview or any Rosalía press and you just knew the music, I don't think these conflicts would come up at all.
I want to introduce a wrinkle into the conversation, though. At the same time that there is kind of like sometimes that yikes feeling kind of taking in Rosalía's music, at least for me and also for you, Michelle, Rosalía still has a pretty sizable Latin American audience. How does that complicate some of the criticisms of her musical performance and aesthetics?
I'm not sure it does, because I feel like Latin America, like the United States, is built on the same racial hierarchies, and like the people in power in Latin America are also the white people. Additionally, like Mexico City would not be the same as like Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic. Like they don't have the same relationship.
Like that Afro-Caribbean influence that has kind of helped to spur her fame is not present there.
Right. And within Latin American culture, this is my issue with Latinidad as a concept, because places like Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Dominican Republic, like when they interact with communities or cultures from like South or Central America, it's a big question mark whether we even count as Latinx. But all of this being said is like, I don't think it complicates it because at the end of the day, like, reggaeton is also an import in Mexico. Like, reggaeton is also an import in Argentina, in Chile, pretty much anywhere that's not like Panama, Puerto Rico, New York.
I wanted to just add, Brittany, to your question that I saw Motomami, the tour for it in Los Angeles, in a predominantly Latino audience in LA, which is, of course, basically, you could argue, one of the capitals of Latino culture in the U.S. And also at the listening event in New York, it was mostly people speaking Spanish. It's not an ethnic group to be a Spanish speaker, but it's a way of being connected to people around an identity, around a language, which is the other group that you can think of as like Arabs, for example, are connected by speaking Arabic. Like that's the connecting sort of tissue of that identity.
Oh my gosh, but so many different groups of people speak Arabic. Yeah.
And so many different communities within that fall under that camp. And I would say that similarly, like to me, a lot of the audiences that relate to her or love listening to her is because they probably just really enjoy hearing music in Spanish because she sings in Spanish. And that is such a core part of just enjoying music lyrically. And the lyrics are interesting and playful, whether she's rhyming some Spanish word with teriyaki or sakura or whatever it might be. I think that it's the connection to the language, which is a big part of people's identity.
I think that's probably the bigger factor in why she's popular in Latin America. And that's probably why I'm going to really love this new album. Like, I really like Berghain. I also really like Saoko. Like, I'm not like a total hater. But I think when it comes to really connecting with someone's artistry, like, I do admire and connect with people who are like grounded in the real world and like in politics. I was thinking of Addison Rae, who's like so fantastical in her pop and so like idealistic, fairy tale-esque, but she also talks about the greed and the amorality and like how she's kind of a bad person for loving money and fame and just sticking with that. And I feel like challenge for European artists, especially Spanish artists, like I want to hear your thoughts on this confusion, this racial confusion where you're not a victim or like an innocent little saint.
It's a lot going on here. As much as like sometimes these moments can cause like a headache, I feel like in pop culture where it's like, oh Lord, let me dust off the old identity conversation again. I actually feel like because Rosalía actually has talent and puts out good music, it makes me feel like these kinds of conversations are genuinely interesting and worth my time. I am so grateful that I got to have this conversation with the two of you. Bilal, Michelle, I have learned so much here. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
That was writer and critic Bilal Qureshi and writer and critic Michelle Santiago Cortez. And you all know I love hearing from you, and I just want to shout out one comment I read this week from my guest appearance on Sam Sanders' show. Spotify user Queen Bean wrote, quote, I loved seeing your happy faces. What a treat, and it's good to know of a fellow completionist for most things. But I did peter out on the Saw franchise somewhere around 4 or 5. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll say having seen the Saw movies, I could see why you petered out at 4 or 5. But I promise it gets better, Queen Bean. You keep going, and it comes back around. And to everyone else, I love hearing what y'all connect with in these episodes. So wherever you're listening, drop a comment or review, and you might just hear me shout you out right here on the show. This episode of It's Been a Minute was produced by
Alexis Williams.
This episode was edited by
Nina Pathak.
Our supervising producer is
Barton Girdwood.
Our executive producer is
Verilyn Williams.
Our VP of programming is
Yolanda Sanguini.
All right, that's all for this episode of It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luce. Talk soon.
This message comes from Jerry. Are you tired of your car insurance rate going up, even with a clean driving record? That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry compares rates side by side from over 50 top insurers and helps you switch with ease. Jerry even tracks market rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Switch with confidence. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/NPR today.
This message comes from Mint Mobile. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no hidden fees. Plans start at $15 a month. Make the switch at mintmobile.com/switch. That's mintmobile.com/switch. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.